For 4 years I slept next to the man who ruined my father's life. And I didn't know it until it was too late. I'm not someone who falls in love easily. I've always been cautious, reserved, even distrustful. It was hard for me to give my time, my space, my emotions. That's why, when I met Julián, I thought I had finally found someone who understood my pace. He didn't rush me. He didn't pressure me. He stayed by my side. And that, in my world, was almost a miracle. We met at an entrepreneur's fair. I had a small stand selling natural cosmetics. He was advising one of the biggest brands at the event. He came over, asked about my products, bought a handmade soap, and came back the next day. Just like that, every weekend. He asked me out in a simple, no-pressure way. Pizza, a chat, a glass of wine. He had a very calm way of being, of talking, almost hypnotic. I felt safe with him, as if the world, finally, had fewer sharp edges. After 6 months, we were already living together. He was thoughtful, respectful, hardworking. He had a consulting firm, said he worked with small businesses, tax advising, boring things I never really understood. I was focused on growing my business, and he supported me in everything. Logistics, social media, planning. My dad, on the other hand, was always more distant with him. Never rude, just distant. There's something off about that guy, he told me once, bluntly. Dad, you can't judge him just like that. I'm not judging, just observing. That conversation hung in the air. I didn't bring it up again. Over time, he started to distance himself too. I chalked it up to time passing, to routine, to each of us having our own world. But then something happened that changed everything. My father got sick. He was diagnosed with advanced cancer. I threw myself completely into caring for him. Julián was there, but less than I expected. He seemed distant, as if my father's illness made him more uncomfortable than it should have. One night, while organizing medical documents, I found an old folder of my dad's, papers from his former company, contracts, lawsuits, and a name that sounded way too familiar. Julián Medina. My blood ran cold. It was my partner's full name. I read and reread. It couldn't be, but it was. That name appeared in a lawsuit as the external advisor who had carried out a fraudulent operation that led to the family company's bankruptcy over a decade ago. I ran to the bedroom, looked for his passport. Julián Medina. It was him. The man who held me every night. The one who told me he loved me. The one who looked at me as if he'd never hurt anyone. He was the same man who had sunk my father when I was still a teenager and didn't understand why my home had suddenly turned gray. I quietly put the folder away, closed the drawer, sat on the edge of the bed. Everything was spinning, as if the floor had no foundation anymore. I couldn't breathe. Was it possible? Could I have been sleeping with the man who destroyed my father without knowing it? Was it a coincidence? Or something much worse? For days, I said nothing. I watched him, every gesture, every word, every absence. I looked for signs I hadn't seen before. He spoke to me with the same tenderness as always, asked how my dad was doing, offered to help with anything. And that was the most unsettling part. He seemed sincere. But how do you fake that for so long? I couldn't take it anymore. One night, while he was asleep, I took his computer. No password. I opened it with trembling hands. I wasn't looking for anything specific. I just wanted to understand. And then I found it. A folder with documents from old cases, scanned reports, and among them, the same contract I had seen in my dad's papers. The same one. And it wasn't there by chance, because next to it was a note, a Word file dated 4 years ago. Title, Ortega Case Closure, full background. My last name, my story, my father. It was all there. He knew. Before he met me, before he approached my stand at that fair. All along, I couldn't breathe. I ran to the bathroom, threw up, sat on the floor for hours. I didn't know how much time had passed until he woke up and came looking for me. What are you doing here? Are you okay? I looked at him, and for the first time, I saw the real face behind the mask. Who are you? I asked. He blinked. What are you talking about? You know exactly what I'm talking about. His face changed. A pause. a kind of resignation. So you know, he said, lowering his gaze. He didn't try to deny it, didn't make up an excuse. Just that, acceptance. How long have you known? I asked. From the beginning. My eyes burned. The words wouldn't come out. Why? I don't know. At first it was curiosity. I wanted to see what had become of you all. I thought you'd know, that you'd notice. But you didn't. And I liked you. Way more than I expected. You liked me? Was I an experiment? No, he said, firmly. What happened afterward was real. All of it. I didn't plan to fall in love with you. But I did. I stood up. I didn't want to hear him. But I needed to. Do you know what you did? Do you know what you did to my family? I know. I messed up. I was 27. Young. Ambitious. Working for a consulting firm that operated on the edge. I didn't think it would affect so much. And by the time I realized it, it was too late. And instead of staying away, you inserted yourself into my life. I wanted to make it right. Somehow. I laughed. A dry, sad sound. And sleeping with me was your way of making amends? He didn't answer. That night I kicked him out of the house. We didn't scream. We didn't argue. I just asked him to leave, and he did. The next day, my father died, without ever knowing the truth. And that was what broke me the most. The funeral was discreet. My dad didn't have many friends. Over the years, he had become a reserved man, almost a hermit. Just a few former coworkers, my aunt, some neighbors, and me. Me, with swollen eyes, with a shattered soul, and a rage I didn't know where to put. I didn't invite Julián, but he came. He stood off in the distance, with his hands clasped, saying nothing. He didn't approach, didn't ask to speak. He was just there, a ghost among the living. I saw him, and I couldn't move. That same night, he sent me an email. I didn't open it right away. Days went by. I looked at it, saw it sitting in my inbox, untouched. Until one early morning, unable to sleep. I opened it. It was long. In it, he confessed everything. He said he didn't have an excuse, only an explanation. That his job back then was to find vulnerable companies and optimize their collapse to benefit third parties. That he didn't know, or didn't want to see, that my father was a good man. That after destroying his company, he kept digging, felt guilty. And one day, when he saw me at that fair, he recognized me from an old photo in the files. He wanted to get close. At first out of curiosity. Then, because he couldn't help it. I fell in love with you knowing it was unforgivable. And still, I didn't know how to stop. I cried. Not out of sadness. Out of frustration. Out of helplessness. From feeling that everything, absolutely everything in my life, had been shaped by a lie. Weeks went by. I shut myself in. Stopped tending to my business. My aunt came by from time to drop off food. I slept in fits. Woke up feeling like I was floating in a life that didn't belong to me. And then, I found something. A box of my father's. It was under the bed, wrapped in an old cloth. Inside were letters, loose notes, thoughts. And on one of them, handwritten, I recognized his writing. If one day you find the one who did this, don't hate him. He'll be carrying enough already. Forgive him. For yourself, not for him. I kept reading that sentence over and over. I didn't know if I was ready to forgive, but I did know one thing. I couldn't stay paralyzed. I called Julián, not to reconcile, but to end the story properly. We met at a cafe. We both knew it was the end. I loved you, I said, and that's what hurts the most. I loved you too, and that is what weighs on me the most. I don't hate you, but I don't want to see you again. I understand. We sat in silence for a while, and I left, without looking back. Rebuilding a life isn't like assembling a piece of furniture with instructions. There are no orderly steps, no clear tools, just broken pieces of yourself, and the hope that somehow they'll fit back together. I didn't know where to start. My dad was gone. Julián had left, and my business, which was once my pride, now felt foreign to me. But one morning, I sat in front of the mirror. I looked at myself for a long time, and I saw me, not as a victim, not as a daughter, not as anyone's ex. Just me. Empty, yes, but alive. I started by cleaning the house, not in a symbolic sense, literally. I threw out old papers, rearranged furniture, gave away clothes, opened windows I hadn't opened in years, painted the walls of my father's room, turned it into a studio. I didn't want to erase his presence, but I did want to turn his absence into something useful. Then, I reactivated my business. I went back to the fair, but with a new attitude. I no longer wanted to grow at all costs. I didn't need to be the perfect entrepreneur anymore. I just wanted to connect with people, to create something authentic. Little by little, my clients came back, and new ones arrived. One afternoon, an older woman came up to me and said, "You look stronger than before." I smiled. I didn't know who she was, but I understood why she said it, because it showed. I also went back to therapy. Talking helped. Crying without guilt helped even more. I discovered things I had once denied, that my father had lived full of silences to protect me, that I had built my identity around blind loyalty, that Julián, with all his damage, had taught me the importance of truly knowing who you have beside you. And most of all, I understood something that changed everything. There was no way to erase what had happened, but I could rewrite what comes next. I enrolled in a basic accounting course. I wanted to understand for myself the rules of that world that once seemed distant. I became more cautious, but not colder, more realistic, but no less sensitive. One day, a journalist from a local outlet called me. She had read the article I posted on my blog, where I told my story. She wanted to interview me, not to talk about the scandal, but about the process, about how a woman can rebuild herself after a double betrayal. I agreed, not out of ego, but because if my story could help prevent another woman from blindly trusting someone without knowing their past, it was worth it. The article was titled, "Becoming Again, When the Truth Destroys, but Also Sets You Free." It was well received. Many people wrote to me, some with similar stories, others just to say thank you. That gave me an idea. I opened a workshop, small, free, monthly. Stories That Save Us, a space where women come together, share, cry, heal. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not an expert, but I know how to listen. And sometimes that's more than enough. Today I look back, and I realize that the story that once seemed written to destroy me actually forced me to be born again. Because that's what I did. I was reborn. Not from rage, though I felt it. Not from hatred, though I felt that too. I was reborn from the conscious choice, not to let the worst that was done to me define the best of who I am. Sometimes I wonder if Julián thinks about me, if he remembers the nights we shared, the silent breakfasts, the spontaneous laughter, if he understands the real impact of what he did, or if he just justified it with that, "I loved you too," and went on with his life. I'll never know. And honestly, it doesn't matter anymore. Because I don't wake up thinking about him anymore, or what he stole from me, or what could have been. Now I wake up thinking about what I'm building, about every story I hear in my workshop, about each woman who arrives with shattered eyes and leaves with a bit more light, about every decision I now make with certainty, because I no longer need anyone's approval. My mother sometimes tells me I seem like a different person. "You're not the same woman who lived in that house afraid of being a bother," she says. And she's right, because I'm not the same. And I don't want to be. I'm the one who walked through fire without losing herself. I'm the one who dared to face the most painful truth, and still chose not to become like those who hurt her. I didn't do it to be strong. I did it to be at peace. My father's name is now on a small wooden plaque at the entrance of the workshop. It's my way of honoring him, of telling him, "You didn't leave the world without leaving a mark." Because I'm here. And I'm still going. And if I learned anything from all this, it's that there's no betrayal that doesn't leave marks. But there's also no wound that can't turn into a scar of strength. Because in the end, what matters is not what they did to you. What matters is what you choose to do with it. And I chose to live